this is Karen here. Nice to be with you. And today we're going to be talking about the Manifestor. Sit back, enjoy, relax. I'm going to do all the work. You just absorb the information. So to review, when we're talking about Manifestor, we're talking about one of 4 aura types. These are the 4 aura types: the generator, the projector, the manifestor, and the reflector. The generator making up 70% of the planet, designed to work and use their energy well. When they use their energy well, it regenerates, or almost like a battery that recharges itself. The projector, who is here to absorb the energies of others and their environment, and then focus in on the other to help guide them to use their energy well. And then the manifestor, who is only 9% of the planet. Did I mention the projector is 20%? The manifestor, 9% of the planet, here to make an impact. And well, we're going to be going into them quite a lot today. And then the reflector, 1% of the planet, who are, kind of taking in their environment in samples and reflecting it back to itself. So they're here to be the barometer of the health and well-being of their society that they live in. So when we're talking about aura type, this is this idea that, you don't end at your skin, but you actually have an energetic presence that extends out from you. And that energetic presence has certain properties, depending on what type you are. When you learn to honor the properties of your aura, then you have an easier time moving through life, because you're needing less resistance, because you're honoring the properties of really just mechanically how your aura meets life, meets others. So the manifestor, what makes a manifestor? Well, a couple things. One, they have an undefined sacral center. So if you are a manifestor and you look at your chart, one of the first things you'll notice is that this second from the bottom center, the sacral, is undefined. Now the sacral center is all about life force. Having this, it's a motor. So first of all, it's a generating of energy. And it's life force, it's vitality, energy to be used in response to life. So again, the sacral center is a motor that regenerates itself. So that's kind of one of the things that makes it unique. When you have that center undefined, it means that you don't necessarily have access to a consistent source of energy that will regenerate you when you use it. So, in and of itself, that means that manifestors, when they work, they'll probably need to take more breaks. They'll need to rest more. They can more work in spurts, and then they also will need to rest. And so, for manifestors, one of the important things is not to compare yourself to generators and not to overdo or overwork. Anyone that has an undefined sacral really needs to be aware of the use of their energy and not overdoing. The second thing that makes a manifestor is that they have a connection between one of the 3 remaining motor centers, the root, the solar plexus, and the will, and the throat center. So they'll have one channel defined that goes to the throat. It might be an indirect connection, for example, from the root up through the spleen to the throat. That would still be a manifestor with undefined sacral. So the throat center in the chart is where, all the energies are trying to make their way to the throat, and the throat's where, things manifest. So, a thought becomes a word or a deed, or, an emotion becomes words, or an emotion becomes action, or that, will becomes action. So everything's trying to make its way to the throat to manifest, to make itself into form in life. And the manifestor has this consistent access from a motor to a throat. So basically they can always get access to the ability to move freely in life independent of needing to be initiated by others. They are initiators. They can start things. They can make things happen. They're naturally very much doers. They are quick. They can, move things. They can make a decision and all of a sudden be doing it. The properties of their aura are that their aura is closed, dense, and repelling. So their aura, in effect, is kind of saying, kind of get out of my way. I'm moving, and I need to be able to move freely. So can move, part the waters. I'm coming through, kind of thing. So, it's really important to know that the manifestor's personality isn't closed. Their aura presence has these properties. So, a lot of the manifestors that I've met have just been such sweet, gentle people. Not necessarily that they always will be, but I just want to make that distinction between, their personality and just their aura and the properties of their aura. One manifestor, when I first told her about the properties of her aura, she described being in high school and entering into the ladies' washroom and having, that there's a lineup of people waiting to go into the stalls, and that she would walk in and people would kind of move out of her way, and she was often allowed to go first, even before the other people. But wow, I can't even imagine that reality. That's so unusual, but that's the impact of a manifestor's aura. It's kind of speaking for them, saying, hey, here I come. All right, and we're going to go into the informing strategy quite a bit as we go through here. So I'm going to move on. So when we talk about manifesting, we're talking about energy moving from, one of those motor centers to the throat. And, everyone wants to be a manifestor. It's like, oh, they get to just do what they want and, go out and make an impact and make things happen and do what they want to do. But it isn't actually like that. The manifestor moves in harmony with life when they are tuned in to life itself and how the consciousness of life is kind of moving them and what their next move is as cued by life itself. So it's not about them thinking of what they want to do and just doing it. It's actually about them being tuned into life itself, but also to their decision-making authority. So if they're, an emotional manifestor, they might be feeling that, something is their next move. Or if they're splenic, they might get an intuitive hit that something is their next move. Or if they are an ego manifestor, they might just hear themselves speaking like, oh, this is my will, this is my will to do this as my next move. So it's not about manifesting from your mind. It's about manifesting from being, attuned to life and also to yourself. Once a manifestor has decided what their next move is in life, then comes in their strategy, which is to inform, is to take a moment and consider, okay, if I do that, who is that going to impact? Who in my life is going to be impacted by that? For example, a manifestor might get a really strong sense that they want to go on vacation. And it could be, like they see a sale and they're like, oh, I want to go on vacation. I'm going to go visit my friend in, Bermuda. So their next move would be they could just pack up and go. That's natural for a manifestor. They don't need anyone else to be able to do what they're doing. But this idea of informing is, okay, take a moment. It's like, who is this going to impact? And then it's like, oh, it's going to impact my coworkers because we've been working on this project together and they might feel like I've left them, even though I already finished my part. Because manifestors tend to be fast in how they get things done. Like everyone's way behind, slower than them. So it's going to impact my coworkers. Oh, it's going to impact my, my kids. My kids are going to, they need rides to school. I usually give them a ride to school. So that's going to make an impact. It's going to impact my spouse. My spouse is going to be alone with the kids. It's like, oh, okay. Well, then it's also going to impact, grandma who needs to take care of them while I'm away. So then, they've got this whole list of people now to inform. And then they can go to them and say, hey, I'm inspired. I want to go on this vacation. So this is what, I just want to let you know, this is what it's going to look like for the next week. And, they're not asking permission. They're letting people know. They're just informing them of what the plan is going forward. This is a scary thing for the manifestor because they can often think that others won't let them go or others will kind of get in their way. And so that's typically why a manifestor doesn't inform, is they don't want to be messed with. However, the opposite is true, is that when they don't inform, they create chaos in the world around them. Because whether they like it or not, a manifestor is making an impact no matter what they're doing. They're, even just going out from the house to get groceries on a whim will have an impact on the people in the house, because all of a sudden the people in the house will be like, oh, where did they go? And they'll get worried. So the manifestor is making an impact whether they like it or not. And when they don't inform others, they create waves of chaos and resistance. So then they end up spending a lot of their energy cleaning up messes from past actions that made waves. Whereas if they can inform in advance, then there are less waves and they have a cleaner, clearer path forward. And they don't end up needing to spend their energy looking backwards and cleaning up messes with the people they've impacted. Yeah, so this is this idea, a manifestor is like a train where they're just doing what they are going to do, and it has a direction in it. It doesn't need the other to be able to move the way it's going to move. But if you don't know that the train is coming, look out. You want to know. The funny thing is, I've just met enough manifestors, and it could just be the people I'm attracting, but they are just so gentle and lovely that just don't like this idea of putting out that a manifestor is like a train. However, it's a good example because they do make an impact whether they realize it or not. And oftentimes they don't realize it, and they're kind of oblivious. They don't understand that anyone would care what they're doing or that it would matter. But they do. They can say things that make an impact, that initiate someone in their life path. So ideally, a manifestor is making a clean and effective impact. Just like, if you've ever golfed and you've hit that golf ball like so crisply and you can just hear the sound of it, it's like whoosh, and it's just like flying. That's a manifestor making a clean impact. And when they don't inform, they can create chaos and waves and anger and damage, really, and really just make a mess for themselves as well. Okay. Manifestors aren't really here to know themselves. So they're here to know their impact and to learn about the impact that they have on others. Whereas a generator is really here to explore themselves, to learn about who they are. A manifestor doesn't care about who they are. The manifestor they care about what they're doing. They care about how they're moving in the world, what the impact is on other people. And seeing their impact is what's going to be most interesting to them. In relationships, people can be mistrustful of manifestors because they don't feel the same connection with a manifestor that they would with, say, a generator or even a projector, because the manifestor's aura is closed and dense and repelling. So they can't really get in there, and they can sense that the manifestor can just leave at any time. I have a cleaning lady here in Mexico I just love, and she's a manifestor. And her husband, to me, is typical behavior of someone mistrustful of a manifestor, is trying to control her. Like he'll take away her cell phone so she can't make any phone calls, and he won't let her learn how to drive, because at some level he can sense that this woman is powerful. This woman is powerful, and she could kind of up and leave at any moment if I don't try to control her and rein her in. And manifestors are here to be this powerful, empowered person moving through their life in the way that they are inspired to move. In their relationships, that can create static, but the difference is informing. So, in a healthy relationship, a manifestor is really letting their partner know all the time, like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And the partner is also informing the manifestor. So manifestors like to be informed. It's a way of showing respect. So a healthy relationship for a manifestor will involve a lot of politeness and kind of courtesy of just keeping people in the loop about how they're moving through life, which is a difficult thing for a manifestor to learn. And, this I can kind of grasp because I'm a manifesting generator, so I have some of the characteristics. And me informing has just been the hardest thing in the world, because manifestors don't need any other to move, so they don't naturally have this impulse to kind of share with people what they're doing. And they certainly don't want to be interfered with. So the more they can just learn this skill of being polite. And the difference is when you really start to grasp that you make an impact as you move through life, then informing becomes a more natural byproduct of that understanding. It's like, oh, I understand that me moving through life has an impact, and so I'm going to be more courteous of others and let them know. Mm-hmm. Okay, an example of informing. The initiator of Human Design, the man who founded it, Ra Uru, he is a manifestor. An example of not informing. So before he knew he was a manifestor, he was, I think he lived in Montreal. He was a successful owner of an ad agency. And one day he just upped and left. He left his company. He left his wife and kids, and he moved to Spain on this little island. And he became a hermit. He lived in a little hut alone for years. And I think he probably changed his name, and he just left it all. That's a manifestor moving without informing. You can imagine the damage and the chaos that created for the lives of so many people. The people who worked at the company and lost their jobs. His kids with whom he never ever repaired that damage. His wife. That is kind of extreme example, but same man. Years later, he was the initiator of Human Design. So here he is sharing this information that's making an impact. And he did many tours of, especially North America and Europe, sharing Human Design, teaching Human Design. And one day he just got the sense, I'm not doing any more tours. I'm not going out. I'm not going to teach anymore. So he got this, truth about his movement in life. And then he realized, he considered, the informing part. It's like, it's going to impact me not doing any tours anymore. And it's like, well, I've been doing this for, let's say, 20 years. That's going to really impact all those people who, put me up all those years. They're, I think they'll be sad that they didn't really get to say goodbye because I never came back. And it's going to, that would be an abrupt ending to, have, made use of them for 20 years, bringing groups together, and then all of a sudden I don't show up anymore. So after really considering the impact of not doing tours anymore, he decided to do one final tour. It's like, okay, a better way is to let people know I'm going to be, I'm not going to be going on tour anymore. And this is the final one, so that they can make peace with that and say goodbye, and that he can really honor them and say thank you. So after considering the impact, he changed his course so that, it would be a more harmonious movement through life. So that's an example of, considering the impact and then informing. And, that made, I'm sure, for a much more harmonious experience for everyone. So as I was saying, manifestors are really powerful, and oftentimes they don't, understand that they're a manifestor, and they can kind of go one of two ways, where they can become the steamroller. So this is kind of where they get used to just doing what they're going to do, oblivious to the impact of others, even angry and rebellious. Like, you're not going to mess with me. I'm doing what I'm going to do. F off, I'm going. So that's an unhealthy expression of their power, is to just steamroll over others. And sorry, I'm getting distracted by the cat is meowing. On the other side, manifestors who can become beaten down, because others can inherently feel the manifestor is powerful, especially like as a child. A teacher might sense like, oh, this kid's going to be a handful, and actually try to control them. And those manifestors learn to kind of accommodate or squash their power in order to not make waves in life. And neither of these expressions, the steamroller or the beaten down, are really a true empowered expression of a manifestor. So, if you are a manifestor and you can relate to either of those, this is an opportunity for you to reclaim your rightful place as someone who is here to make an impact and to do your thing. And it doesn't mean that people are always going to like it when you inform them of what you're doing. That's not the point. It's just about, you doing your thing in a way that's respectful of your environment. I love this slide so much. I just love the image. Because here's this person who is in their power and their glory. And they're parting seas. I mean, manifestors have this incredible power for everything to go their way. I've noticed an example of that. My cousin is a manifestor, and she described going to this Blue Jays game, the Toronto Blue Jays, and she was with a whole group of people, and she had forgotten her ticket, and it was like an hour and a half public transit ride to get there. So she had forgotten her ticket, and she was like, everyone just go in, I'll get in, don't worry. And so she just goes up and she starts talking with the people at the ticket booth, and she explains her way into the Blue Jays game, which I don't think will happen for most types. That's something that manifestors have, this magic, and I've heard from other manifestors, working with like hotel clerks and stuff, that they really can just kind of get what they're here to get, what they want. So most of us have manifestor envy. That's what one of my clients says. So manifestor children it's good to, kind of train them to ask permission. Hey, mommy, I want to go outside. Can I go outside? And also really giving them a lot of freedom. Manifestors are designed to survive and move on their own freely. So, one of the examples in one of the books I was reading about manifestors is from Karen Curry. She describes, a manifestor child might look outside and be like, oh, it's a beautiful day. I want to go in the forest. And so they just, go out the back door and go to the forest, and they spend all afternoon or longer in the forest. And, to the parent, this is terrifying because they don't know where their kid is. They're, fearful for the child. So there can be things that the child would naturally want to do that seem dangerous to the parent. And I think that's probably part of the balance, is learning to, ask the child to ask for permission, like, mommy, I want to go and play in the forest. And as much as possible, giving them the freedom to do what they want to do so that they don't become either the beaten down and controlled manifestor or the steamroller who just rebels and does what they want and gets in trouble their whole life. Manifestors have their own waiting to do, especially if they're emotional. If you're an emotional manifestor, it's about really, taking time to consider who you are going to impact, but also, taking time to consider and feel out your moves in life. And this idea that, manifestors are here to be agents of the program. So if you can imagine life is this great big program that has its own kind of will, or the way that life or consciousness wants, kind of things to unfold, the manifestor can be kind of tuned into the movement of life itself and their part in it. And that involves also being receptive to life and not just driven by their own mind and their own kind of egoic desires. The manifestor not self, or the sort of unhealthy expression of the manifestor, is anger, where they feel they're being interfered with and that others are trying to control them. They're experiencing those waves of resistance from their environment. And the question is, who have I not informed? What the manifestor is really here for is peace. This idea of, moving through their life without resistance, and, simply, parting the seas and going where they're going. And also, being a restful being, that they are yang, and that they do tend to have this oomph to do things and to move in life, and yet they are also undefined sacral, so they do need to rest, and they may tend to work better in spurts and then have plenty of time for rest. Peace. One of the manifestors that I met, I was emailing with, and he signed his signature, peace. And I just really felt that from him. It's like, yeah, this person is peaceful. To sleeping, a manifestor can do well to go to sleep before they're tired. So even an hour before, just kind of winding down and giving their body time to really kind of slow down, to let go of any energies that they'd picked up during the day, and maybe read or just watch TV or whatever it is that they do that's calm and quiet, so that they become tired. If they wait till they're exhausted to go to bed, they've probably overdone it, and they can have trouble sleeping. So, go to bed earlier than when you're tired. Give yourself time to wind down, and sleep alone if you can. That just creates the opportunity for you to really rest. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed that.